This is TWiT.
Now, meanwhile, in Canada,
Oh, boy.
you ain't going to be getting no more news. Meta is already blocking news in Canada. This is over that bill, C-18, which is passed and is law. And in response to the law requiring internet giants like Meta and Google to pay news publishers, Meta has said, that's it. No more news for you.
No soup for you.
The Online News Act. Canadian government immediately denounced the move as irresponsible. What the hell?
Wait a minute.
No, that's not.
No.
Irresponsible was the bill.
Right.
The consequences are inevitable.
So there was no one in these meetings that said, you know what could really go wrong here if we propose this bill?
Oh, they were told.
You know,
They were told, including by publishers. Jeff Elgie, we talked on the show before, tried to warn them. Lots of others tried to warn them. Google, Lord knows, tried to warn them. I watched testimony by Kent Walker and Richard Gingras before the Senate committee. They were warned, and now it's going to hurt like hell. But I think what's going to happen is the minister of whatever in charge of the stuff is trying to back up now and say, well, we'll fix this in regulation. If they put a cap, I think Facebook's news has gone for good. I think Facebook is going to say, hallelujah.
Yeah, they don't want to do this.
Parties.
Yeah.
That's all we want. Nothing controversial.
So
Just gets us in trouble.
Let me get this
Get us
straight.
out of that.
Because I don't have a Facebook account, but if I said I wanted to share a link to a New York Times article about my friend Jeff Jarvis on Facebook, could I not do that?
I guess not.
Wow.
And let's not forget that most of the links that, we'll put it differently, all news organizations link to themselves.
Yep.
And they can't do that
this
anymore.
is what Rachel Curran, Meta's head of public policy in Canada, said. News outlets voluntarily share content on Facebook and Instagram to expand their audiences and help their bottom line. In contrast, we know the people using our platforms don't come to us for news. Meanwhile, Canadian Heritage Minister, it's fitting that the Heritage Minister would be the one who's complaining about all this. You know, back in the day, Canadian Heritage Minister Pascal Saint-Onge, who is in charge of the government's dealings with Meta, said this is irresponsible. They would rather block their users from accessing good quality and local news instead of paying their fair share to news organizations. And I guess that's where the disconnect happens.
Right.
What's their fair share? What do you mean?
Well, here's the beauty of this. Here's the great irony of this, right? The platforms were told your links are worthless. Only our content is worthwhile. Now that the links are gone, they're screaming bloody murder because the links were very valuable to them.
Yeah. We're going,
Jeff, this is much more extensive than the Australian thing, right? This is so the Canada didn't want to use the Australian model, the amended model in Australia.
They did
after they tried something similar. So they already knew what could happen. They'd seen the outcome, and the Canadian government said, we're going to go ahead with this thing that already failed in a country with a maybe similar aspect as ours.
They went further than Australia. They did use Australia as a model, but in Australia, the weird thing is, Glenn, that there was a kind of a trigger. And the trigger didn't get triggered. So that the money that Facebook and Google pay to publishers in Australia is voluntary. They were not forced into negotiation. They were not forced into anything. And so in Canada, it was different. It was, no, you must negotiate. And if you don't, we're going to send you to arbitration and you're going to pay through the nose. And so this time, the only option that the platforms had was to say, well, no, then we're not going to have news and there's nothing to negotiate.
It sounds like they just want a free ride. Basically. Just a free ride.
Well, their argument is, and I think that everybody on this panel agrees it's not right, but their argument is we're standing up against the tech giants. They're using our content for free. We want them to pay for it.
They're driving you traffic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what they miss, the point they miss is these are private businesses that can make the business choice, which they have, not to drive that traffic. Because we don't want to pay for it.
All right.
They're not actually. It's funny because Google and Meta aren't really disputing that might have value. They're just saying, well, we don't care that much, so we just won't do it anymore.
Right.
And now what? Now what do you do?
Fry.
The Saint-Onge said they would rather block their users from. Oh, I said that. We're going to keep standing our ground. After all, if the government can't stand up for Canadians against tech giants, who will? This is a very misguided. Quixotic stand, if you ask me.
Well, isn't this the whole push-pull about it's both about where the value lies, but it's sort of about where the money goes. And I know publishers have been angry for decades, since the rise of, let's say, Craigslist even, our friend Craig Newman, that any money that they deem as belonging to them as a media company is shifted to some online source. And sometimes I think it's justified when there's or I shouldn't say justified rather, but they're right to feel like, something happened and the value we're bringing, like having articles, is being used by somebody else. They're taking the text, they're previewing it, they're doing something that reduces our ability to, bring in revenue. But I feel like there's always a sense of like, well, we're obliged to receive that revenue because we do it. On the flip side, how did Twitter and Facebook and other companies rise? Like, where does their advertising revenue come from? At one point, it was because people went there to read some parts of news or discuss news. I feel they sucked a lot of advertising dollars off of newspapers in particular. But I don't know you can't put the genie back in the bottle. But is there a way to produce something that's fair, that doesn't simply say, well, you just give billions back to media companies?
Well, what they were trying to do, what Google was trying to do, was to say, we're doing Showcase, we're giving grants. They were trying to say a few things. One, we need a cap on this. You can't say that there's some formula out there that we don't know and we're going to have to agree to, and we don't know where the end of it is. We'll pay some money to news for the benefit of news. We're a good citizen. We'll do that.
Yes.
The second thing Google said to them was, the government shouldn't really be involved in this. Why don't you set up an independent organization panel that would decide who's in and who's out? Because that's a huge issue, right? Because the largest newspaper company in Canada is controlled by a hedge fund, American hedge fund. So we know what's going to happen. The money's going to go to the American hedge fund's bottom line. It's fungible. It's not going to support journalism. The Toronto Star is now owned by investors. It's going to go to the investors. And a lot of little guys are going to get left out, and a lot of native publications are going to get left out. And so why don't you have a separate organization that can adjudicate all this? And the government said, no, to both. We're going to do it our way. Well, now, I think they're going to try to back up and write regulation around this law that gets around the worst of it, find a way to cap and come back. And Google, I'm going to predict, will probably come back to the table because, news has some benefit to search customers there.
Yep.
But Facebook, I'll bet, is never coming back. Facebook's going to say, thank you very much for letting us prove how much we don't need you.
Meta has said that links, according to Reuters, to news articles make up less than 3% of the content on its users' feeds, and say it lacks economic value. So you're right. It may be a value to Google, but it isn't a value to Facebook. It's just a pain in the butt.
And the value to Google is limited. The value to Google, I think, is between 4 and 6% of stuff. And so most of it is not. And, there's other places you can go to find news. You can go, fine. You want people to go straight to your homepage? Fine.
Let them go. Wasn't there a
there.
survey that basically said that most people aren't getting their news from social media, be it Facebook or what have you? They're actually going to the source more so than...
No, they're still going to the social media, but they're getting linked to the sources then. And so Jeff Elgie, who we talked about 2 weeks ago, said he will immediately lose 50% of his traffic for Village Media.
Because it's shared on Facebook first.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yeah, okay. Facebook and Twitter. And
this sounds like fighting a battle of years ago where, page views were the thing. And now most publications want subscribers. And you'd think they'd maybe want to do anything that would produce a stickiness for someone to pay that fee. I mean, are page views worth that much?
Glenn, that's what I love about you is your innocent view of the world. Yes, you're absolutely right. But they also want bakshish.
Yeah.
It's the same exact conversation going around AI and copyright right now. Barry Diller and company are out there saying, we want billions from these AI companies, even though there are doctrines of fair use, and even though the AI is transformative, and even though there's no necessarily clear copyright case. They see it's like the cartoon animals with dollar signs in their eyes going round and round and round and round and round. So yes, they want subscribers. Yes, they want to build relationships. No, they don't know how to, and still they want bribery money, blackmail money.
It's not, obviously, if Google or Facebook published the entire article so that you didn't have to read it anywhere, you could read the whole thing on Google or Facebook.
Yeah,
there would be some legitimate concern about that.
They pay for that. They license it in News Showcase now.
Yeah.
They license it.
That's the
But
snippet issue
it's a
again.
little snippet, and it's really not enough to keep you from going to the site unless.
Well, here's the irony, Leo. I did tests years past where actually the longer the snippet, even unto a full article, is the best ad and has the highest click-through.
Sure. Well, I think, what next you go after social networks like X or Threads and say.
Can we agree not to say that ever again?
No, I don't want to say Twitter
Twitter?
because that's a copyright of ours. We're just going to say X. I'm thrilled. Are you kidding? I'm thrilled. It's X. Let Elon. There's another one. Let him. He wanted it. Let him stew. Let him stew in it. This episode of Tech Break is brought to you by ACI Learning. ACI Learning's Cyber Skills is the newest training tool for employees, especially non-IT professionals. Flexible training covers everything from password security and phishing scams to malware prevention and network safety. Try it for yourself, then bring your team along. Fill out the form at go.acilearning.com/twit for a free 2-week trial.